Hey YouTube, Chris Battle here again. Phoenix Vlogs Volume 5, I believe. And I want to start off by saying my voice might sound a little weird. I'm getting the initial signs of a cold for sure, so pardon me there. But in this particular episode, I wanted to talk about the Nintendo Switch 2 if we can. Can we talk about the Nintendo Switch 2? So I have purposely not talked about it yet, even though obviously I'm very ingrained and entrenched in that gaming handheld life. So yeah, I'd love to talk to you about it and some of the things that were interesting about the Nintendo like Direct and all the talk that's been going on about the Switch 2. And this is what is it, mid-May, and it comes out June 5th. It'll be available. So many people have already secured their pre-orders. I am not one of those people, and that's purposefully. So yeah, and I did have a chance. Actually, Walmart could have got in on the Walmart launch, but like I said, chose not to. And I think that does say a lot in itself, as I am a Nintendo fanboy. I always have been, probably always will. When I was younger, grew up in Japan, early years, formative, so Nintendo and Sony were pretty much all I knew for a long time. So always will be particularly a Nintendo fanboy because Pokemon, being a 90s baby and living in Japan in the early 90s, got caught up in that craze firsthand in Japan. So, but Nintendo Switch 2 just did not do enough for me. Felt very safe, which on one hand, safe is not always the worst. But I think one of the biggest problems is I don't want Nintendo playing it safe when they are already behind in so many ways, thanks to things like the Ally X, the Steam Deck, which I also like. Yeah, I feel like you are already somewhat on the defensive. I don't know. I mean, it's Nintendo. People will always buy Nintendo. Like fanboys like me are part of the problem. But yeah, I don't know. It's very interesting. So Nintendo does their direct, and it's nothing crazy. I mean, a lot of this stuff was pretty heavily hinted at or leaked well before, the key. I don't call it a keynote, but the direct and the unveiling. But there's a couple reasons why I just think Nintendo's in an interesting position in general. I think one of the reasons why I'm not jumping out to get the Switch now. This is my Switch OLED, and I do have a V1, like not V1, like I guess V0, the OG Switch. Well, actually, I broke that messing around with it, but I do, I still own that, and I do like the Switch. I mean, I have a decent library on it. Like the Switch is pretty cool. But there's a couple things to me that could be done better and take the Nintendo Switch to the next level. And it's not even about hardware necessarily. I think performance, the Switch is, each new iteration of it will always be outdated just based on just how it all really works with something like the Switch. They have to make it at such crazy amounts that I don't think they're ever going to be ahead of the curve when it comes to that. Like some of these gaming handhelds, like it's a different beast in a way. But I think Nintendo lets us down a lot on the software side, and we're not going to get too crazy on NSO or Nintendo Switch Online, but I think that's one of the major ways it lacks. And I've seen, if I remember correctly, for the Nintendo Switch 2, they're talking about drip feeding some actual GameCube titles, which is like, okay. And the GameCube is one of my favorite consoles. Not because I think it was good. I mean, I think it was kind of a flop from a Nintendo's perspective, but I love that thing. And it's interesting because I can play GameCube games on this ROG Ally X whenever I want. I've got a decent GameCube library there. So it's like Nintendo at this point, the Switch itself doesn't even actually make it into my everyday carry. Like, let's just put it that way. Nintendo is not it does not make it into my everyday carry, right? Like the Switch itself, it's one of those devices that is very, very, I don't want to say outdated, but there's many things that are just interesting about it. For example, they drip feed all the backwards compatible things. Like it's very frustrating to me, because if I want to play Game Boy Advance, and I pay for Nintendo Switch Online at the highest tier annually, there may be 30 or 40 titles, period, and none of them are the titles that I want to play on there, really. Like, they got a couple things I'm into WarioWare, I'm into some of that stuff. Like, there is a couple things there where I'm like, yeah, this is cool. But there's none of the good stuff I like. There's none of the Pokemon titles. There's nothing, to me, there's no meat on those bones, in a sense. Like, they pick and choose what they want to put on there, and it's garbage. Like, where are we going to play these Game Boy Advance level games, 3DS, like any of these games? Like, all those systems you've pretty much put out of production, which makes sense. But there's nowhere to go. Sorry, my LAX started pulling up the Steam interface. Might have been a little loud. But yeah, there's nowhere for me to just go and really do that easily, because Nintendo chooses everything. You know, they curate that experience to whatever they feel like. So when I travel, if I'm just taking my sling bag, I'm traveling with the Mio Mini Plus for Game Boy Advance. Yes, Game Boy Advance, Game Boy Color. Those are the two main things I'm playing on this, to be quite honest with you. I have an original, like the teal Game Boy Color, all the original stuff, untouched, unmodified. That's nice. And then I have, sometimes I'll bring I modded this Game Boy Advance to this like smoke gray. It's got the USB-C mod. I've got speaker amp mods on it and some other stuff. Obviously, IPS screen, and then I'm running with a Omega Flash Definitive Edition flash cart. So this is like my ultimate Game Boy Advance there. So if I sometimes bring that. Then I'm traveling with a couple of the things that the current gaming handhelds don't modify very well. The PS Vita, I like the 1000 model. Actually, preferably, I like the 1100 model. I have actually 4 Vitas 1000s right now still left, and 2 of them are the 1100 model, which included the cellular. And I actually have 2 they call it PSVSDs. So you can actually disable the cellular mod and then add an additional slot in there for another micro SD card. So I've modded this fully. I think I have 1.5 terabyte SD card in here via SD to Vita. So Vita games are very hard to replicate on these systems, so I've got that there. So that I always have that in my bag. Those two actually go in my sling bag, that and the Mio Mini Plus. But if I want to play 3DS games, I essentially have to pull out the old... I have the new Nintendo 3DS XL, the Fire Emblem Fates edition, and I keep that up to date and fully modded that. And then I also carry as a backup the new Nintendo 3DS XL, the Pokemon 25th Anniversary Edition. I want something smaller, but I like the XL. So I have to carry all these additional things instead of Nintendo just making it easy and putting actually good things on the Nintendo Switch online service. People have to jump through all these other hoops, which is just frustrating. Makes no sense. And I don't have any faith that Nintendo Switch 2 is going to change that. Like, technically, with a modded Switch OG, you could put a bunch of other systems on here, and then you could have that kind of Switch form factor, which is nice. But yeah, my Switch doesn't make it into my everyday carry. It stays at home. So it's one of those things. All the Switch games I want to play, I'm playing on this, or I'm playing on the Steam Deck. So it's just kind of interesting. And I think, to me, one of the biggest L's of Switch 2 was the new SD cards. Micro SD Express or something, which last time I checked, it was double the price of the regular micro SD. And you can't use that in the new Switch unless you're holding like pictures or something, which who's holding a bunch of photos on their Switch like that when we have smartphones? I mean, we just have all these other things that hold photos a lot better than a Nintendo Switch. Sorry. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. So it's just, there's so many things that don't make any sense about it, really. That to me is the big thing. And then obviously the price point. And I think one of the coolest parts about the Switch is essentially the way the controls work. But I am not a Joy-Con fan. The Joy-Con to me is one of the biggest travesties in gaming in a while, right? You get this little revolutionary little joystick, and within a year or less, it's drifting on you. I have probably 6 different pairs of Joy-Con from my OG Switch, and every one of them developed stick drift, even though I did not play the console that much. Like, my daughter goes to play, she's in my Animal Crossing village, she goes to just walk, and before she's even touched the controller, her character's walking off screen. It's doing its own thing. And that was when they cost $70, I believe. They've increased the price of accessories for these tariffs. If you're paying $90 for a Joy-Con, yeah, I don't know, that's highway robbery to me. I pretty much exclusively use the Pro Controller, which is kind of sad. I mean, one of the biggest parts about the Switch is like the cool ability to tear 2 controllers off of it very easily. Now, I've always had big hands, so that little Joy-Con never really did it for me anyway, but the fact that they have not upgraded, I don't think, a single part of the joysticks to include any type of Hall effect sensors or anything like that, to me, that's just, it doesn't make any sense. They already have to basically replace Joy-Con for free still, based on, I think, a class action lawsuit from earlier. So, I don't know. I've gotten these aftermarket Nixie Hyperion 2s, I believe. Wireless joysticks, and they have Hall effect and, at the very least, the joysticks, but I think also in the triggers. So, they work out great. Haven't had any issues with stick drift. And I've also had to upgrade one of my old Joy-Cons with the Hall effect sticks. So that to me is just annoying. So basically I'd still have to get a Switch 2 Pro Controller, which, you know, everything's just going to add up heavily. But also another thing is, I think the ability for the Switch to be modded will probably take, if not a year. I'm sure it'll be moddable immediately, but you know, the way the modding scene works is folks like to wait until it makes sense. Like, they're not gonna show their cards, they don't show their hand early. It doesn't behoove them to do so. So I think they're gonna wait. And with the last Switch, the original models were unpatchable basically, based on it being a like hardware exploit, so that was cool. But I think maybe, you know, a year, 2 years into that Switch 2 life cycle, we'll probably see the ability to perform some modifications and kind of unlock the device a little more. I also think downgrading from OLED was a choice that I'm not fond of. And this is coming from somebody whose main device is a non-OLED device. This ROG Ally X is not OLED, but it's also a lot more powerful than a Switch, even a Switch 2. So this is coming from somebody who is not saying that everything has to be OLED, but I don't think you should be going from OLED to non-OLED. Like, I don't think you downgrade your user base like that. I don't think that makes sense. Although I do agree FPS is more important. There had to have been a way to do both. I don't believe. So essentially I'm waiting for that mid-cycle refresh. I know I'm gonna eventually get a Switch 2, but I think yeah, I'm gonna wait for that OLED refresh halfway through. So I don't know, there's a couple decisions that just made me scratch my head. The Joy-Con not having anything to protect from drift, the price of the Joy-Con being increased when they're still garbage. Another thing was the back stand, like the little, which I hardly ever use, but at least on the OLED, they remodeled it to be substantially better, and make more sense. What I see from Switch 2, it looks odd and flimsy again. It almost looks like a plastic toy. Like, it looks more toy-like. So I'm not huge on that, and then I don't think that there are going to be enough changes to NSO in a positive way. NSO is by far the worst. I was gonna say, I don't know, Sony. Yeah, I still feel like NSO is by far the worst of the paid network tiers on a console or a handheld. So I just, and the price continues to creep up on it. So it's a little bit shocking that they're not doing more. Some of the whole game card, virtual card stuff is also just weird. The fact that, and I am a Mario Kart guy, the fact that a Mario Kart game is damn near $90 now, and this is coming from a person who has Mario Kart 8 Deluxe Booster whatever edition. So I think if I paid for all that up front, that'd still be a $90 thing, but it includes a crazy amount of extra content and DLC. I have not heard anything about this Mario Kart World, including a lot of that stuff, but I still think it's a tough pill to swallow, spending $90 on a Mario Kart game. And I'm a Mario Kart guy. I put a lot of hours into Mario Kart, so I don't know. I mean, I think it does make sense to get the bundle with Mario Kart World, as it's only a $50 difference, and you save a little bit if you're already going to buy the game. And I do feel like Mario Kart has always been a, I don't know, system seller type game. But still, I don't know. It's just wild to see. I think it makes no sense to me that digital games prices continue to rise when you're not paying for brick and mortar shelf space. The licensing is just a license, essentially. So I don't know. I think if you want to incentivize people to go digital, it doesn't make much sense to have digital priced as high as it is these days. So I'm also just not a fan of that. What else? I was worried about the fact that the Switch 2 model had that weird, like, it almost seemed like easy break point when you pull the Joy-Con off on the side, but folks that have handled it said it's very sturdy, so I'll take their word for it. But yeah, it's just kind of wild. I think it wouldn't have been hard to make the Nintendo Switch seem like a no-brainer to folks, but I don't see what causes people that have a Switch OLED to really jump on this upgrade, other than they were just always going to. Which, I mean, like I said, you know, that's one way. But yeah, I don't know. It just seems interesting. I'm interested to see how everyone I've talked to has not felt positively about it, and I generally have a pretty diverse group of people I talk to. Most people are just like, how soon do you think it's going to be hackable? Basically. But yeah, they're still not planning to buy it right away or anything like that. So it is very interesting. I like the idea of it. I think the Joy-Con look better to me. Like, they look more, the design is more pleasing, and I like the black with the colors and stuff. Like, I thought that first Switch, when the Switch model came in gray, I mean, it's not, I don't know, that doesn't pop to me. That's not, like, if I see a all gray Joy, like, yeah, it just doesn't look good, as opposed to, like, the red and the blue. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes. But yeah, it's hard to really, I don't know, the Switch 1 was already not part of my, even if I went on vacation, I'm not taking the Switch with me. Like, it doesn't even make it into my travel bag. Like, what makes it into my travel bag is the 3DS and one of the handhelds. Like, the Switch just wasn't good enough to make it into my kit. And I think it's not hard to make it better. The Nintendo 3DS had a virtual console library that was expansive. It was impressive. I thought it would be the standard, and I thought that would keep Nintendo at the top for a long time. Because who else outside of Xbox has a backwards compatibility backlog like the 3DS had? I mean, it was crazy. And now that I've modded it I've had modded it for so many years, it's like I can go generation to generation on Pokemon games, and then with Switch Home or Pokemon Home, transfer all those out legitimately. Like, it's just, I don't understand why Nintendo continues to downgrade. Like, there's no reason why these things. This probably has 10 times the power of a 3DS at least. There's no reason why we couldn't have had some form of backwards compatibility with Game Boy Advance games that people care about. Like, it's also weird because what was the point really of... I have a bunch of the Pokemon games like that they sold on their eShop, like that were on Game Boy Color, like yellow, blue, red, and all that, but you wouldn't even give people the ability to buy the games backwards compatibly on here. Now, I know 3DS was just a very different console, 2 screens, and it's just interesting. But I can replicate that on my Steam Deck pretty well even, so now they do have trackpad and a bunch of other features, but at least for some of these Game Boy Advance and Game Boy Color games, I think Nintendo is missing a lot of things. And with the resources and money Nintendo has, I can't believe there isn't a department where they're specifically dedicated to backwards compatibility and getting some type of real virtual console. And I think the Nintendo fan base is so rabid, they would even pay for some of these games again, in a way. Like, even if you put up a new virtual console and somebody had to buy Pokemon Yellow again, I don't think they'd be like... I mean, eventually, if you want, I don't know. It's just, I don't want to rant on, I tell you I don't want to rant on Nintendo Switch Online, but I mean, it's just such a travesty how good that could be. And still be $90. I mean, I think I'm paying $90 a year. I think you could offer a lot more. So, that's kind of one of my biggest disappointments so far. We'll see. I'm interested to see what it looks like, what NSO looks like on the Switch 2 starting out versus a year down the line, how it looks. Because they really have been drip feeding a lot of these virtual console things, at least on the Switch currently. So I'm interested to see. Like, you might come in 3 months later and you'll see new titles have been added to Super Nintendo, and it's like 3 titles. And it's like, okay. You're waiting on the flip over and it's like, alright. What weird titles. It's like, who was asking for this? So I don't know. It'll be interesting, and I don't see anything on Nintendo Switch 2's lineup right now that to me screams I need to jump out and get this. Like, even like a lot of the third-party stuff, Hades 2. Why would I not play that on my Steam Deck OLED? Obviously, I know the price points are different, but it's also probably not going to cost me $80 to Hades 2. I mean, I've been on Hades 2 since it first released in early access, so I think I actually pre-ordered. So I've been on Hades 2 for a while, but I don't know. I think, yes, these other gaming handhelds are more expensive for the hardware, but I think utilizing Steam or GOG or whatever your Epic Games or whatever your marketplaces that you buy your games from, in the long run is going to be so much cheaper than the Switch. And I really think there's so much at the software level that could be better. Like, my Switch right now, it looks nice, but if I go into the basic, the non-modded version of it, like if I went to the normal system, it would look awful. It's like so barren. Like, there was so much customizability on the Nintendo 3DS that mine didn't look like my wife's. Like, I had a specific theme there, and I pay, even if you had to pay for those themes, I had a specific theme there. How many years has the Switch been a thing? Like 8? All they have is basic white and basic black. And I think the themes even say basic. So where was the imagination at? I always thought when they said basic white and basic black, oh, Nintendo's already got a bunch of stuff in the pipeline. They're going to be sending that out soon. It's been like 8 years. Just crickets. Like, literally, it's just basic white and basic black. Like, it makes zero sense to me. Like, it just doesn't make sense. This is what you could have. if Nintendo actually cared. So it's just kind of crazy. There's so many things from a software perspective. Then anything on the Nintendo eShop, it's the slowest and most terrible thing to navigate. Like it's painful. I like navigating on a Vita better than I do on the Nintendo Switch. Like it's just crazily unintuitive, slow. It's actually a nightmare. Like anytime I want to buy a game legitimately, which I bought a ton, it's a nightmare. Like it is the worst experience. It's like slows to a crawl. Every page takes forever to load. Like I don't know. It's unacceptable. I think, yeah, it's terrible. So I don't know. Long episode, kind of all over the place, but yeah, basically Nintendo played it really safe, but then in all the ways it could be worse almost, it seemed like it was, outside of just obviously it's been 9 years, here's some new internals and it can run games better. I don't anticipate that I'm going to be, I mean, I'm essentially, when I get a Switch, it's going to be purely Nintendo first party stuff. I don't see any reason for me to jump out and go grab something like a Hades 2, which is actually probably pretty lightweight. It'll probably look pretty decent. But I have an OLED Steam Deck, and that OLED looks great in Hades. So I don't know. It's interesting. They're touting all these third parties, bringing these games over that are more power hungry. But one, the titles are so popular that I guarantee you somebody's already played them on their computer. Or two, I don't know. I guess I don't want to be super pessimistic. I think there's, like I said, I think this device itself looks cool. I like the look of the Joy-Con, like color scheme design better. The Joy-Con are bigger, which I'm obviously a fan of. I mean, I went and got third-party Joy-Con that are, like, look at the ass on that. Like, it's huge compared to, like, your average little Joy-Con. But it's great. It's nice to grip. So it's just, it's not all bad. I am glad that obviously performance took a leap. I'm interested to see what Nintendo first party stuff looks like. Like, I'm a Pokemon fan, and the last couple Pokemon games have been horrendous. Like, I play them on my Ally X because it actually plays relatively decent on that, but playing it on the actual official hardware is a nightmare. It's crazy that playing on official hardware is so much worse than playing it on anything else. Like, I had started playing it on my computer, like, before I even moved to playing it on these, like, powerful gaming handhelds. But it's the worst on here, and I've seen some of the enhancements that they've touted, and things look a lot better. I mean, if Nintendo's first-party studios like Game Freak are having trouble translating things, it's just not good. So I am curious to see how much better games look. And I've heard there's some games will charge you to have Switch 2 editions of them that you already bought, which is weird. It's odd. It is very odd. But we'll see. I'm interested to see how people like it after a couple months. I may pick one up at some point if it just... A part of me wants to have one of the launch models just to stash it away and not touch it until they release the first jailbreak for it. But at the same time, I'd rather wait for something like Special Edition. I don't envision that 6 months down the line they're not going to pull out a Pokemon Z Special Edition, and I can actually at least, like, this is the Zelda Breath of the Wild one, and I have the Joy-Con somewhere put away so they don't develop stick drift. But yeah, so I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. I'm interested to see if you guys, if you guys think anything. Like, is everyone else leaning more positive? That's not what I'm hearing. I try not to have an echo chamber. But I don't know. I do think one of the accessories that probably no one cared about, but I was kind of excited about, was the camera, which I don't know why you need this specific Nintendo camera, but I am interested to see what that functionality looks like. I can't imagine it's going to look that good, though, in a sense of online play is already kind of dicey on a device like a Switch because it just always seemed way slower, and you weren't able to even hook it up via Ethernet with the original dock, if I remember correctly, that I had. You had to get like a second one that had Ethernet on the OLED ones, but it would be interesting to play a game of Mario Kart and be able to talk trash with your actual face during the game. So I did see they had like a webcam, like a Switch 2 camera, and I heard it was used for different games in some interesting ways. So that does seem like something I'm curious about. But yeah, I don't know. I was not impressed, and one of the reasons I haven't talked about it, don't want to make this into a pessimistic type of channel, but we'll see. We'll see what everybody thinks of it when it comes out. It's a Nintendo device, so it does usually get better over time, but I feel like they could have came out the gates swinging a little bit harder. But yeah, hopefully this content doesn't drive you away if you are kind of someone who came from like the fitness tracker Whoop content. I am still kind of plugging along with that stuff, and actually, if you see here, there's been an update to my health span age, so we'll probably do a video on that fairly soon. But yeah, just another ph0enix vlogs. Wanted to, I guess it probably sounded more like a rant, but get some stuff off my chest as it relates to that. Talk about, I mean, I'm a big Nintendo guy, and I feel like not talking about the Switch 2 is kind of weird, but a lot of my thoughts weren't the most positive, but it's good to kind of get them out there. And yeah, subscribe if you haven't. Stay tuned for more content. We're getting ready to get some more content, and yeah, we'd love you to be a part of it. And shoot me a comment. What do you feel about Switch 2? Did you pre-order one? What are some of the biggest wins to you, and what are some of the biggest losses? And yeah, what do you want to see next? Appreciate y'all. Bye.